Gas metal arc welding is our next process we're going to talk about. Gas metal arc welding, you might have heard this one, also referred to as MIG. The professional term is gas metal arc welding. In the shop, it's known as MIG welding. It's an old term, metal inert gas. GMAW stands for gas metal arc welding. This is more or less, I'm getting back to coat hangers, or just a piece of wire. It's just a piece of wire that we're going to run a bunch of electricity through, and we're going to shield it with an inert gas, such as argon or helium, or we can use an active gas like carbon dioxide. But we're shielding it with a gas to keep oxygen and nitrogen, who are not our friends, from contaminating our weld puddle. MIG welding, that's what we're talking about. So you can see here we've got the guy's got a welding gun on the right-hand side, and then you can see the process on the left-hand side. This would be the end of the weld gun. So our electrode is going to go through a copper guide tube, and it's going to come out the end of that. There's going to be some electricity flowing through it. We're going to have our shielding gas. We've got the weld puddle, and we just go along and we deposit weld metal onto the base metal.
Here's another sketch of gas metal arc welding. This one's from the Welding Handbook, 8th edition, Volume 2 from the American Welding Society. It gives you a little better breakdown of the gun than the previous drawing. The previous drawing more was a process drawing. This actually gets into the weld and the deposition of the weld pool and the filler metal into the weld pool. You can see you've got a gas nozzle that's providing the shielding gas, and the shielding gas is right above your weld pool. You've got the arc, you've got the consumable electrode that's putting filler metal into the weld pool. Then off on your left, you've got deposited weld metal. Notice, no slag. Shielded metal arc welding, slag. Here, there's no slag, because here we're using a gas, carbon dioxide, argon, helium, or some combination thereof, to provide a shielding gas to keep the oxygen out of the weld metal. That's a key here, and not to delve into metallurgy or go down a road on shielding gases, but the key is to keep oxygen out of the weld metal. We don't want to have a situation where we've got oxygen contaminating the weld metal. We want to have a very clean deposit, and oxygen is one of the bad things that we want to keep out of our weld metal. So that's why we use either a slag to shield it, or a shielding gas, or a type of atmosphere that's going to protect our liquid weld metal until it's in a solid form.
Okay, we got a welding gun here, and you can see we got a blue trigger right there. When we pull that trigger out the end of the nozzle right there, three things are going to happen. That's where we're going to do our welding. That's where the whole show happens. First thing, well, not first thing, all three things happen simultaneously. We're going to get welding wire, filler material is going to come out the end of that nozzle. We got a little contact tip. There's going to be wire that comes out the end of it. And we're going to get a shielding gas flow out the end of that nozzle also. It's going to be argon CO2, maybe just pure CO2, maybe it's argon helium. Depending on what metal we're talking about, we could do a 3-hour talk about shielding gases and the correct shielding gas for different metals. We're not going to go down that road. But anyways, realize that world exists. Anyways, and the third thing that's going to happen is we're going to get an electrical current. So for this process to work, gas metal arc welding, we need wire, shielding gas, and electrical current. The electrical current can be either DC electrode positive, DC electrode negative, depending on what you got going on. And the shielding gas flow, that's because oxygen's not our friend. Oxygen is not our friend in welding. We like to breathe it, but we're trying to keep oxygen and nitrogen out of our weld puddle. For the welding process to work for gas metal arc welding, we're going to need either a power supply on the far right-hand side or the far left-hand side, depending on what we got going. We're also going to need a wire feeder. So you can see we've got that spool of wire on the second to the left. We've got the wire feeder. That's what's going to spit out our wire and send it down our welding gun so that it comes out the end of our contact tip and we get our weld. And then you can see our welding gun. But these are the main components for the gas metal arc welding process. Filler metals for gas metal arc welding, MIG welding, they come in spools like this. That looks like it's copper wire. They just put a very thin coating of copper on this wire, a lot of these wires, to keep the wire from rusting while it's in storage. And it gives it some other properties that help it slide through the weld gun and the liner a little better and whatever. But it's not copper, it's steel under there. And they come in spools like this of various weights, 20, 25, 30 pounds. There's a couple of, and maybe lighter weights. But this is what, if you're going to be doing much of this is what it looks like. Not too much to it, but it's just about a notch away from being garden variety carbon steel for most of the mild steels you're going to weld. And you can get other specialty chemistries, higher tensile strengths and whatnot for gas metal arc welding, depending on what you're welding, or stainless steel or aluminum. But this is what it looks like. It comes in spools. It goes down through the welding gun, comes out the end. We run electricity over it, and we shield it with a shielding gas to keep oxygen from crashing our party and contaminating the weld puddle.
This slide's just a couple of pictures of guys using gas metal arc welding. You can see they've got the gun. They've got their long sleeve shirts on to protect them from the UV rays. They're wearing their welding hoods, gloves, and, got a good position, striking an arc. So, and you can see the welding gun, the electrode protruding from the end of the gun.
Okay, so we looked at shielded metal arc welding, which is, like I said, basically a piece of coat hanger covered with wooden chips and paper or some kind of mineral coating. And the second one was gas metal arc welding, which is just a piece of wire. We run it through a gun. We run some electricity through it. It melts the base metal, melts our electrode, which gets deposited into the weld joint. We shield it with either argon or CO2 or helium or some other such gas. And the gist of all this is that oxygen is not our friend. We don't want oxygen contaminating our weld puddle. But these are two of the most basic processes come across.